Welcome to Trojan War, Greece, where history and myth collide in one of the greatest tales ever told. This three-part documentary series takes you on an unforgettable journey through the rise and fall of an ancient conflict that shaped the course of civilization. The Trojan War, a conflict etched into the annals of history and myth, began not with the clash of swords but with the whims of gods and the follies of men. It was an age when the divine walked among mortals, and the destinies of kingdoms were shaped by the caprices of Olympus. The story of Troy is one of love and betrayal, honor and vengeance, and the inexorable pull of fate. In the lush valleys of Greece, where the olive groves stretched endlessly and the Aegean Sea sparkled under the sun, the kingdom of Sparta thrived under the rule of King Menelaus. His wife, Helen, was renowned as the most beautiful woman in the world, her beauty a gift from the gods themselves. Yet this divine gift would become the spark that ignited a war destined to consume nations. Far across the sea, in the wealthy city of Troy, Prince Paris lived a life of luxury and indulgence. The youngest son of King Priam, Paris was known more for his charm and good looks than for any prowess in battle or wisdom in governance. His life took a dramatic turn when the goddesses Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena appeared before him, each offering a bribe to win his favor in a contest of beauty. Aphrodite's promise was the most tempting, the love of Helen, the fairest of all women. Blinded by desire and the promise of divine favor, Paris set sail for Sparta. His arrival was met with the hospitality befitting a prince, but his intentions were far from honorable. Under the guise of a diplomatic mission, Paris wooed Helen, and whether through Aphrodite's enchantment or her own longing for adventure, Helen fled with him to Troy. The elopement of Helen and Paris was not merely a personal betrayal. It was an affront to the sacred bonds of hospitality and a challenge to the honor of Menelaus and all of Greece. Menelaus, consumed by rage and humiliation, called upon the leaders of the Greek city-states to uphold their oaths of allegiance and aid him in reclaiming his wife. Among those who answered the call was Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae and Menelaus's brother. A shrewd and ambitious leader, Agamemnon saw in this crisis an opportunity to expand his influence and secure his legacy. He rallied the greatest warriors of Greece, the cunning Odysseus, king of Ithaca, the mighty Achilles, the greatest warrior of his generation, and Ajax, Diomedes, and countless others, each a hero in his own right. The assembly of the Greek fleet was a spectacle unlike any the world had seen. 1,000 ships set sail from the port of Aulis, their sails billowing in the wind, their prows cutting through the waves like the beaks of great birds. The air was thick with the sounds of clanking armor, the shouts of commanders, and the prayers of men seeking the favor of the gods. But the gods were not easily appeased. As the fleet prepared to depart, the winds died and the ships lay motionless in the harbor. The seer Calchas revealed that Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, was angered by Agamemnon's arrogance and demanded a sacrifice. The price was Agamemnon's daughter, Iphigenia. Torn between duty and love, Agamemnon made the fateful decision to sacrifice his child, a deed that would haunt him and sow the seeds of future tragedy. With the winds restored, the Greek fleet finally set sail, but the journey to Troy was fraught with peril. Storms scattered the ships, and the warriors faced trials that tested their resolve and unity. Yet their determination never wavered, for the honor of Greece and the glory of victory beckoned them onward. As the shores of Troy came into view, the Greeks prepared for war. The Trojans, forewarned of the approaching fleet, had fortified their city and rallied their own allies. King Priam, though advanced in years, was a wise and just ruler. and his sons Hector and Paris stood ready to defend their homeland. Hector, the eldest and noblest of Priam's sons, was a warrior of unmatched skill and integrity, while Paris, though less experienced, was driven by a desire to prove himself. The first encounter between the two armies was not on the battlefield, but in the realm of diplomacy. Odysseus and Menelaus approached the gates of Troy, demanding the return of Helen and the treasures Paris had stolen. The Trojans, confident in their walls and their gods, refused. The die was cast, and the stage was set for a conflict that would echo through the ages. The initial skirmishes were fierce but inconclusive. The Greeks, though superior in numbers and experience, found the Trojans to be formidable opponents. The walls of Troy, built by the hands of the gods, seemed impregnable, and the defenders fought with the desperation of men protecting their homes and families. Amidst the chaos of battle, the heroes of both sides began to emerge. Achilles, the swift-footed warrior, carved a path of destruction through the Trojan ranks, his presence on the battlefield a terror to his enemies. Hector, equally valiant, led the Trojans with courage and wisdom, his every action a testament to his love for his city and his people. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the war settled into a grueling stalemate. The Greeks, unable to breach the walls of Troy, resorted to raids and sieges, while the Trojans, though unable to drive the invaders away, held firm. The cost of the war was immense, with countless lives lost, and the land around Troy laid waste. Yet, amidst the bloodshed and suffering, moments of humanity and heroism shone through. The bonds of friendship and loyalty among the warriors, the acts of compassion and sacrifice, and the enduring hope for peace and reconciliation were reminders that even in the darkest times, the light of the human spirit could not be extinguished. As the first year of the war drew to a close, the Greeks and Trojans alike began to realize that this conflict would not be easily resolved. The gods, ever watchful and ever meddling, continued to influence the course of events, their favor shifting like the winds. The heroes of the Trojan War, both Greek and Trojan, were caught in a web of fate, their destinies intertwined in a story that would be told for generations to come. And so, the storm gathered over Troy, a tempest of blood and fire, of honor and vengeance, of love and loss. The Trojan War had begun, and its echoes would reverberate through the ages, a testament to the glory and the tragedy of the human condition. The Trojan War dragged on year after year, with neither side able to claim a decisive victory. The Greeks, though mighty in number and skill, found themselves thwarted by the towering walls of Troy and the resilience of its defenders. The Trojans, bolstered by their belief in the righteousness of their cause and the favor of the gods, held firm against the relentless assaults. But as the war entered its 10th year, the fragile balance of power began to shift, and the fates of heroes and kingdoms hung in the balance. At the heart of this shifting tide was Achilles, the greatest warrior of the Greek army. His prowess on the battlefield was unmatched, his presence a beacon of hope for his comrades and a harbinger of doom for his enemies. Yet, Achilles was a man of contradictions, a hero driven by honor and glory, but also by pride and rage. It was this pride that would soon ignite a conflict within the Greek camp, one that would have far-reaching consequences. The trouble began with Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces. A king of immense power and ambition, Agamemnon was also a man of towering arrogance. When the Greeks captured the city of Crisa, Agamemnon claimed as his prize Chryseis, the daughter of Chryses, a priest of Apollo. Chryses, desperate to reclaim his daughter, offered a generous ransom, but Agamemnon refused. In his anger, Chryses prayed to Apollo, who responded by unleashing a plague upon the Greek camp. As the plague ravaged the army, the seer Calchas revealed the cause of the god's wrath. The only way to appease Apollo was to return Chryseis to her father. Agamemnon, though furious, had no choice but to comply. However, in a move that would prove disastrous, he demanded compensation for his loss. He chose to take Briseis, a captive who had been awarded to Achilles as a prize of war. Achilles, already simmering with resentment over Agamemnon's arrogance, was incensed by this affront to his honor. In a fit of rage, he withdrew from the fighting, vowing that he and his men, the Myrmidons, would no longer take part in the war. Without Achilles, the Greeks found themselves at a severe disadvantage. The Trojans, emboldened by the absence of their greatest foe, began to gain the upper hand. The withdrawal of Achilles marked a turning point in the war. The Greeks, once confident of victory, now faced the grim reality of a prolonged and bloody conflict. Agamemnon, realizing the gravity of his mistake, attempted to reconcile with Achilles, offering lavish gifts and the return of Briseis. But Achilles, his pride wounded and his heart hardened, refused to be swayed. He remained in his tent, brooding and resentful, while the war raged on without him. The Trojans, led by the noble Hector, seized the opportunity to press their advantage. Hector, the eldest son of King Priam, was a warrior of unmatched skill and integrity. Unlike his brother Paris, whose actions had sparked the war, Hector was driven by a deep sense of duty and love for his city and family. He was the heart and soul of the Trojan defense, a beacon of hope for his people. Under Hector's leadership, the Trojans launched a series of successful attacks, driving the Greeks back to their ships. The Greek camp, once a place of confidence and camaraderie, was now filled with despair and discord. The heroes of Greece, Odysseus, Diomedes, Ajax, fought valiantly, but without Achilles, they struggled to hold the line. The situation reached a critical point when Hector, in a daring nighttime raid, set fire to the Greek ships. The flames illuminated the night sky, a grim symbol of the Greeks' impending doom. Desperation gripped the Greek camp, and even the most stalwart warriors began to lose hope. It was in this moment of crisis that Patroclus, Achilles' closest friend and companion, made a fateful decision. Patroclus, unable to stand by and watch his comrades perish, begged Achilles to lend him his armor and allow him to lead the Myrmidons into battle. Achilles, though still unwilling to fight himself, agreed, hoping that the sight of his armor would strike fear into the Trojans and rally the Greeks. Patroclus, clad in the gleaming armor of Achilles, charged into the fray, his presence reinvigorating the Greek forces. For a time, it seemed as though the tide of battle had turned. The Greeks, inspired by the sight of what they believed to be Achilles, fought with renewed vigor, driving the Trojans back from the ships. But Patroclus, carried away by the heat of battle, pursued the retreating Trojans too far. He found himself face to face with Hector, who recognized the armor but not the man beneath it. The duel between Patroclus and Hector was brief but brutal. Despite his courage, Patroclus was no match for the Trojan prince. Hector struck him down, stripping the armor from his lifeless body and claiming it as his own. The death of Patroclus sent shockwaves through the Greek camp, and the news reached Achilles like a thunderclap. Achilles' grief was all-consuming. The loss of Patroclus, his dearest friend, shattered the walls of pride and anger that had kept him from the battlefield. In that moment, his wrath turned not against Agamemnon, but against Hector and the Trojans. Achilles vowed to avenge Patroclus, even if it meant his own death. The return of Achilles to the battlefield was a moment of both hope and dread. The Greeks, though heartened by his presence, knew that his rage would bring untold destruction. Achilles, clad in new armor forged by the god Hephaestus, was a force of nature, his every strike a testament to his fury and skill. The Trojans, who had grown accustomed to their recent successes, were unprepared for the storm that was about to descend upon them. Achilles cut through their ranks like a scythe through wheat, his path marked by death and devastation. The rivers ran red with blood, and the cries of the dying filled the air. Hector, realizing the gravity of the situation, knew that he alone could stand against Achilles, but even he, the greatest of the Trojan warriors, could not match the fury of the Greek hero. The final confrontation between Achilles and Hector was a clash of titans, a a battle that would determine the fate of Troy. The duel took place before the walls of Troy, under the watchful eyes of gods and men. Hector, though brave and skilled, was no match for the enraged Achilles. After a fierce struggle, Achilles struck the fatal blow, piercing Hector's armor and ending his life. But even in death, Hector's honor remained intact. Achilles, consumed by rage and grief, desecrated Hector's body, dragging it behind his chariot in a final act of vengeance. The death of Hector was a devastating blow to the Trojans. Their greatest champion was gone, and with him their hope of victory. But for Achilles, the cost of his vengeance was high. The gods, though they had favored him in battle, were displeased by his treatment of Hector's body, and in the depths of his grief, Achilles knew that his own fate was sealed. The wrath of Achilles had turned the tide of the war, but at a great cost. The Greeks, though victorious in battle, were weary and divided. The Trojans, though broken, were not yet defeated. The war, far from over, would continue to exact its toll on both sides. As the sun set on the battlefield, the shadows of the fallen heroes stretched long across the blood-soaked earth. The wrath of Achilles had brought both glory and tragedy, a reminder of the fragile line between greatness and ruin. And in the halls of Olympus, the gods watched and waited, their hands ever guiding the fates of mortals. The Trojan War, a conflict born of pride and passion, continued to unfold, its story a tapestry woven with the threads of heroism and heartbreak. The wrath of Achilles was but one chapter in this epic tale, a chapter that would be remembered for generations to come. But the end was not yet in sight, and the fates of Troy and Greece remained entwined in a dance of destiny. The death of Hector marked a turning point in the Trojan War, but it did not bring an end to the conflict. The Trojans, though bereft of their greatest champion, were not yet defeated. The walls of Troy, built by the hands of the gods, still stood strong, and the defenders, though weary and heartbroken, were determined to fight on. The Greeks, emboldened by the return of Achilles and the death of Hector, pressed their advantage, but the path to victory remained fraught with peril. Achilles, though triumphant in his vengeance, was a man haunted by grief and foreboding. The loss of Patroclus weighed heavily on his heart, and the knowledge of his own impending death cast a shadow over his every action. The gods had foretold that he would not return home from Troy, and Achilles, though he had chosen glory over a long life, could not escape the sense of doom that hung over him. The Greeks, aware of the prophecy, sought to protect their greatest warrior, but fate could not be denied. In a final, desperate attempt to turn the tide of the war, the Trojans called upon their allies, including the Amazon warrior Penthesilea and the Ethiopian king Memnon. These new champions brought fresh hope to the defenders of Troy, but their presence also drew the wrath of Achilles. Penthesilea, a fierce and skilled warrior, led a contingent of Amazons into battle, her courage and prowess inspiring the Trojans, but her encounter with Achilles was brief and tragic. In a clash of titans, Achilles struck her down, but as he stood over her lifeless body, he was struck by her beauty and valor. In that moment, he felt a pang of regret, a rare glimpse of humanity amidst the carnage of war. Memnon, the son of the dawn goddess Eos, was a warrior of immense strength and skill. His arrival on the battlefield brought new challenges for the Greeks, and his duel with Achilles was one of the most epic confrontations of the war. The two heroes fought with unmatched ferocity, their blows shaking the earth and their cries echoing through the heavens. In the end, it was Achilles who emerged victorious, but the cost was high. The death of Memnon was a blow to the Trojans, but it also brought Achilles one step closer to his own fate. The final chapter of Achilles' story came not on the battlefield, but within the walls of Troy. Guided by the gods, Paris, the man whose actions had sparked the war, sought to avenge his brother Hector. With the aid of Apollo, Paris let loose an arrow that found its mark in Achilles' heel, the only vulnerable part of his body. The greatest of Greek heroes fell, his death a moment of profound sorrow and triumph. The loss of Achilles was a devastating blow to the Greeks, but it also marked the beginning of the end for Troy. The Greeks, though mourning their fallen comrade, were determined to see the war through to its conclusion. It was Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, who devised the plan that would finally bring down the city. The Trojan Horse, a massive wooden construct, was the centerpiece of Odysseus' strategy. The Greeks, pretending to abandon the siege, left the horse as an offering to the gods. The Trojans, believing the war to be over, brought the horse within their walls, unaware that it concealed a select group of Greek warriors. Under the cover of darkness, these warriors emerged, opening the gates of Troy to the waiting Greek army. The fall of Troy was swift and brutal. The Greeks, their thirst for vengeance unquenched, swept through the city, leaving destruction in their wake. The streets ran red with blood, and the air air was filled with the cries of the dying. King Priam, the wise and just ruler of Troy, was slain at the altar of Zeus, his death a symbol of the city's downfall. Hector's young son, Astyanax, was thrown from the walls, ensuring that no heir would rise to challenge the conquerors. The women of Troy, including Queen Hecuba and the prophetess Cassandra, were taken as captives, their fates a testament to the cruelty of war. Andromache, Hector's widow, was given to Neoptolemus, the son of Achilles, while Cassandra became the prize of Agamemnon. Helen, the woman whose beauty had sparked the conflict, was reclaimed by Menelaus, her fate a subject of debate among the gods and mortals alike. As the flames consumed the once great city of Troy, the Greeks prepared to return home, their ships laden with spoils and captives. But the gods, ever capricious, were not yet done with their meddling. The journey home would prove to be as perilous as the war itself, with storms, shipwrecks, and divine retribution awaiting the victorious Greeks. The fall of Troy was a moment of triumph and tragedy, a testament to the glory and the folly of human ambition. The heroes of the Trojan War, both Greek and Trojan, had played their parts in a story that would be told for generations to come. Their deeds, both noble and ignoble, would be remembered as a reflection of the human condition, a reminder of the fragile line between greatness and ruin. And so, the Trojan War came to an end, its echoes reverberating through the ages. The city of Troy, once a beacon of civilization, lay in ruins, its story a cautionary tale of pride and passion. The heroes of the war, both victors and vanquished, had left their mark on history, their names immortalized in the annals of myth and legend. The fall of Troy was not just the end of a city, but the end of an era. The world would never be the same, and the lessons of the Trojan War would continue to resonate, a timeless reminder of the cost of ambition and the power of destiny.